The war was already well underway when Earth's name was finally spoken with fear. Across the galaxy, the alien warlords had crushed civilizations with weapons so advanced they left nothing behind but smoking ruins. Planets fell one after another, each rebellion squashed beneath the crushing weight of alien superiority. They believed Earth was a relic, a planet far too primitive to have any real military power. To them, humanity was little more than a minor inconvenience, an insignificant blip in the cosmic scale, a species with outdated technology that hadn't yet developed the firepower to be a true threat. When Earth's first contact with the warlords occurred, it was almost a joke. The aliens, with their gleaming ships and incomprehensible weaponry, barely noticed the human resistance. Earth had weapons, of course. They had guns, tanks, missiles, conventional tools of war that seemed like children's toys to the advanced invaders. But the humans were unbowed. They refused to surrender to the notion that their history, their civilization, and their strength could be so easily dismissed. General Alexander Brooks, the commanding officer of Earth's joint military forces, had spent months preparing for the inevitable conflict. A career soldier, Brooks was not a man who would cower at the thought of alien invaders. He was known for his unwavering resolve, but even he had to admit that the scale of the threat facing Earth was like nothing he had ever seen. But amidst all the technological marvels the aliens possessed, one thing they had never encountered, never fully understood, was the sheer power of Earth's artillery. Brooks had been in command for over a decade, long enough to see the evolution of humanity's military capabilities, and long enough to know that Earth's artillery could be its final stand. The Howitzers, massive cannons capable of firing shells that could obliterate entire battalions, had been the backbone of Earth's military for decades. In the face of an interstellar invasion, many thought them antiquated, but Brooks knew that these weapons had the power to do more than just make a dent in the invaders. They had the power to turn the tide of war. Among Brooks' inner circle was Major Greene, a sharp-minded strategist and the chief engineer in charge of Earth's artillery division. She was young for someone in such a critical position, but her reputation as a brilliant tactician had quickly risen through the ranks. Greene was not only responsible for maintaining and overseeing the artillery units, but also for adapting them to modern warfare. When the alien fleet first entered Earth's atmosphere, she and her team worked around the clock to ensure the weapons were ready for a fight they were certain would come. In the shadow of the massive artillery bunkers, Greene looked at the massive guns, her hands steeled with determination. The warlords might have underestimated the power of human ingenuity, but she knew better than anyone that Earth's firepower could surpass their expectations. "They've never seen anything like this," she whispered to herself. "And they never will." Brooks had always believed in the power of human resolve. The alien invaders might have superior technology, but he had faith that the sheer will of the human spirit could hold its ground. This was not just about artillery. It was about proving Earth's worth on a galactic stage. It was about sending a message. Humanity would not be steamrolled, no matter the odds. He stood before the war room's holographic map, a constant reminder of Earth's vulnerability. The warlords were marching toward them, their fleet in orbit with no hesitation. But Brooks could see their arrogance. They didn't think Earth's resistance would amount to much. They believed that Earth's artillery, old, crude, and slow, would be little more than a nuisance. To them, it was a war of numbers, and they had them in spades. They had no respect for the weapons that had carried humanity through centuries of terrestrial conflict. But that would be their mistake. It would be the one thing the warlords had failed to account for. "Prepare for the worst," Brooks said to Greene, his voice steady, but the weight of his words hung in the air. "But make sure they know what we're capable of." The moment the first wave of alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the sky lit up like a storm. The warlords deployed their forces with clinical precision, sending wave after wave of highly advanced ships to land and begin the assault. Human defenses held little promise of success, but the artillery had been positioned in secret, ready to make its mark. Brooks and Greene had one advantage. The warlords underestimated their weapons. They saw them as relics of a bygone era, incapable of inflicting significant damage. But it was precisely this underestimation that would play into Earth's favor. Brooks had insisted that the Howitzers be set up near the outskirts of the urban battle zones, where the open terrain would allow their full firepower to be realized. As the first of the alien ground forces approached, the massive cannons slowly came to life, their barrels shifting with terrifying precision. Greene stood beside the command center, watching as the first salvo of shells was launched. The sound of the artillery was deafening. Earth's forces, though few in number compared to the Warlords, had a firepower that could not be ignored. The Howitzers unleashed a barrage of shells, each one powerful enough to shatter alien armor like paper. For the first time, the Warlords hesitated. On the front lines, the soldiers were filled with a new sense of purpose. The aliens had never expected such resistance, and it was clear now that they had no idea what they were up against. The ground rumbled as explosions echoed in the distance. Major Greene, standing in the bunker, allowed herself a small smile. She could already see the confusion spreading among the alien ranks. Their arrogance had blinded them to the true nature of Earth's strength. Back in the war room, Brooks received the report. Earth's artillery was making its mark. The Warlords had finally realized that Earth's artillery wasn't just a relic. It was a weapon of mass destruction. They were beginning to doubt their belief that victory would come easily. And that was exactly what Brooks had been counting on. The first wave had failed to account for the power of Earth's artillery, and now the tide was turning. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Earth was no longer the underdog. The fight had only just begun. The alien forces had been relentless in their assault, launching wave after wave of assault ships that screamed through Earth's atmosphere like streaks of lightning. Each strike came faster, heavier, and with a terrifying precision that seemed to pierce through the heart of Earth's defenses. Yet, for every assault, Earth's artillery responded with devastating force. Major Olivia Greene stood in the command bunker, watching the real-time data feed as the alien ranks faltered. Her Howitzers had made a difference. The massive guns had cut down enemy forces, toppling towering machines and shattering their defenses. For the first time in the battle, the aliens were scrambling. General Brooks paced the war room, his face tense. The first wave had been shattered, but this was far from over. He had known the Warlords would regroup, would retaliate, and now Earth's artillery was about to face its biggest test. The aliens, underestimating the power of the Howitzers, had clearly assumed they would sweep the battlefield easily. But now they knew they had been wrong. "The Warlords are regrouping," said Captain Jameson, Brooks' right-hand officer, his voice clipped. "Their command ships are pulling back and sending in reinforcements. They're coming for our artillery." Brooks didn't flinch. "Let them come. We'll hold them off with everything we have." But even as he said it, there was a sinking feeling in his chest. The Warlords would adapt, and with every wave, they learned more about Earth's strengths and weaknesses. It was only a matter of time before they figured out how to neutralize the artillery. Major Greene had spent the last several hours recalibrating the Howitzers, adjusting fire patterns, and ensuring that every shot would count. The shell casings from the first wave lay scattered across the ground, evidence of the power they had unleashed, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The Warlords had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. She turned to Sergeant Kim, a seasoned veteran who had manned the Howitzers for over a decade. His eyes were tired, but his hands were steady. "Get the next round loaded. We're not backing down." "Yes, ma'am," Kim replied, his voice firm, but his gaze betrayed a flicker of doubt. He had seen the destruction the Warlords had caused from space. They were not going to be easy to stop. Greene understood. She shared his concerns, but she couldn't let fear take hold. They had come this far. Earth's survival depended on them. She scanned the battlefield, searching for signs of the enemy's next move. The air was thick with the distant sounds of explosions, the eerie hum of alien energy weapons cutting through the chaos. And then she saw it. The alien command fleet, massive ships descending toward the surface, surrounded by their elite strike teams. "We've got company," Greene muttered, stepping toward the map. The Warlords had arrived, and this time, they weren't holding back. Back in the war room, Brooks received the reports. The Warlords had deployed their most powerful assault units, and they were heading straight for the artillery positions. There was no room for error. Earth's defenses were already stretched thin. He had ordered every available unit to bolster the artillery, but even with the Howitzers, the odds were growing slimmer by the hour. "Captain, ready the reserves," Brooks commanded. "We need to buy more time for the artillery to make its mark." "Yes, sir," Captain Jameson replied, heading for the communications panel. Brooks stood still, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. Every command, every action now had consequences. He could already feel the tension building in his gut. The Warlords had underestimated Earth's artillery, but now they would test whether it could hold up against their most powerful weapons. Greene's voice crackled over the comm system, sharp and decisive. "General, we've got eyes on their elite forces. They're close, too close." Brooks' jaw tightened. "Hold the line, Major. Keep those howitzers firing. No matter what, we can't let them breach the perimeter." Greene didn't hesitate. She turned to Kim and the other soldiers manning the artillery. "Load the heavy rounds. The Warlords want to play hardball. We'll give them a taste of what they've been ignoring." As the first alien wave broke against the artillery defenses, the earth-shattering booms of the howitzers reverberated across the battlefield. The ground trembled, but the aliens kept coming. They were massive, towering machines of destruction, their dark armor impenetrable to anything Earth had thrown at them. Yet, when the howitzers fired, each shell exploded with blinding force, creating craters and massive shockwaves that sent shock troops flying. But the aliens were not easily deterred. They adapted quickly, deploying their shielded battalions to absorb the fire, their weaponry slicing through Earth's defensive lines. Greene's heart raced, her mind working in overdrive. The artillery was doing damage, but the Warlords' tactics were evolving faster than she had anticipated. "Adjust fire. Concentrate on their forward units. We need to break their momentum," Kim shouted to his team, and the howitzers roared in response. Another barrage exploded, but the aliens were learning. They were moving faster, using cloaking technology to shield their most critical units from the artillery's line of sight. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and it was clear that the Warlords were no longer underestimating the human defenses. Brooks watched through the live feed as the alien fleet began to reposition. "They're adapting," he muttered. "We need to push harder. If we let them take the artillery, we lose everything." On the battlefield, Greene was already making decisions that would either break them or save them. The aliens had discovered a weakness in Earth's artillery placement, a blind spot the soldiers had failed to notice in their initial calculations. The Warlords were striking fast, launching wave after wave of elite soldiers directly toward the artillery units, their weapons glinting with lethal intent. Greene grabbed a communicator. "Brooks, we're taking direct fire. They're targeting the artillery. We need reinforcements now." Brooks' voice came through, steady despite the chaos. "Hold on, Major. You got backup on the way. Just keep those guns firing. Earth's fate is in your hands." Greene set her jaw, determination flooding her veins. "We won't let them down, General." The artillery roared once more, each shot a desperate call for survival. The Warlords were no longer laughing. Earth's artillery, though old and seemingly obsolete, had proven to be more than a match for their might. But this was just the beginning. The true test of humanity's was about to begin, and only time would tell if they could hold their ground. The air was thick with tension as the Warlords' forces made their final push. The battlefield was a ruin, scarred by the relentless waves of battle that had raged for hours. Earth's artillery had done its job, slowed the invaders, torn through their ranks, but it hadn't been enough. The Warlords were relentless, and they had adapted, countering the artillery's destructive power with precision and cunning. Now, the fight was reaching its peak, and Brooks knew the moment of truth had arrived. The aliens would either break, or Earth would fall. In the command bunker, Brooks stood before a holographic map, watching as the Warlords' forces advanced with terrifying speed. Their elite strike teams were only moments away from reaching the artillery positions. He had already given every order he could, and the reserves were in place, but there was only one thing left to do. Earth had already proven its resilience. Now, it was time to show the Warlords just how far humans would go to protect their home. Major Greene, Brooks said, his voice firm despite the chaos unfolding around them. Do you have a plan? Greene's voice crackled over the comms, and for a moment, the static almost made it sound like she was already at the end of her tether. We're holding the line, General, but we're running out of time. They've got us surrounded, and the artillery is almost down. If we don't do something now, we'll lose everything. Brooks could hear the determination in her voice, even through the crackle of static. It was the same fire that had kept her going since the first wave. She wouldn't give up. Neither would he. We don't stop until the last gun is silent, he said, his voice unwavering. They think they've won, Major, but they haven't seen what Earth can really do. Greene's answer came quickly. We'll make them see. She ended the comms, and Brooks turned to the rest of the command room. The soldiers were preparing for a final stand, gathering every last weapon they had. The artillery's effectiveness had waned as the aliens adapted, but there was still hope. Earth wasn't out of options. Not yet. On the front lines, Greene had already made her decision. The Howitzers were close to being overrun, the alien forces closing in faster than expected. It was a delicate balance now. Keep firing, keep the artillery operational, but also protect the last of their forces. If the artillery fell, so would the hope of Earth's survival. But if she could hold the line just a little longer, Brooks' reinforcements would arrive. She had to make that decision. Kim, her trusted sergeant, moved swiftly between the artillery units, barking commands as he oversaw the final adjustments. Ready the final rounds, he said, his voice grim but steady. This is it. We either win this fight or we don't. Make every shot count. Greene nodded, her eyes focused on the advancing alien forces. She could see the alien warships in the distance, their gleaming hulls almost mocking her resolve. She wasn't sure they could hold on much longer, but she had no intention of giving up. Not now. Not when humanity was teetering on the brink. We're outnumbered, Major, Kim said, a hint of resignation creeping into his voice. If we don't pull back. No, Greene interrupted, her voice sharp. We stand our ground. We've come this far, and we won't let them break us. She turned to the soldiers around her, each of them weary but resolute. This is what we've trained for. Every round, every shot, is a reminder that Earth is worth saving. Don't let them think we're weak. The soldiers nodded, their faces hardening as they readied themselves for the final assault. The alien forces were nearly upon them. Greene didn't wait. She gave the order, and the artillery roared to life once more. The first shell flew, cutting through the sky with a sharp, deafening crack, landing in the heart of the alien battalion. The blast sent shockwaves across the field, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The aliens' armored lines were thrown into disarray, but they quickly regrouped, adjusting their strategies. They were relentless, their power unlike anything the humans had faced before, but the human resolve was not to be underestimated. Brooks, back in the command center, was watching the feed. He could see the way the artillery was making its mark, even as the aliens adapted. But he knew it was only a matter of time before they overran the artillery positions. He'd given everything to this fight. He had poured every ounce of his strength into this defense, but in the end, it was up to the soldiers on the ground. It was up to Major Greene. And then, as the tide of battle seemed to sway in favor of the Warlords, something changed. The Warlords, in their arrogance, had miscalculated. They believed Earth's forces were on the brink of collapse, and they pushed forward with all the might they had. But in doing so, they had underestimated one thing: human creativity. Greene's eyes narrowed as she saw the opportunity. She called to Kim, "Bring them in. All units now." It was a gamble, but it was the only chance they had. With the artillery's remaining power, they could unleash one final barrage, something that would leave nothing to chance. A concentrated assault aimed directly at the heart of the Warlords' command ships. The shells flew, and this time they were different. Instead of scattering across the battlefield, they honed in on the Warlords' fleet, a precise, coordinated attack that ripped through their defenses with brutal efficiency. The aliens, caught off guard, scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The core of their command fleet, the very ships they had relied on to lead the attack, was now shattered. Explosions rocked the battlefield, and the ground trembled beneath Earth's final offensive. Brooks watched in awe as the Warlord forces faltered. The momentum had shifted. The Warlords, unable to adapt in time, were forced to retreat. The battle was over. Greene stood amidst the ruined artillery positions, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but her heart pounding with victory. The aliens had underestimated them. They had believed Earth's artillery was weak, a relic of a forgotten age. But in the end, it was Earth's unyielding will, its refusal to bow before the Warlords, that had made the difference. The battle had been won, but the cost had been great. Still, as the last of the alien forces withdrew, leaving nothing but scorched Earth behind, one thing was clear: Earth was no longer the underdog. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not to be trifled with. And the Warlords? They would never forget the day they faced the full force of Earth's artillery.